Also, the next panel is striding the high notes, distinguished guests. We have very distinguished panelists. I would like to invite them to the stage. Amna Ajmal from MasterCard and Professor Pınar Özcan from University of Oxford are sharing valuable insights on the journey of payment services in becoming digital banks. And Mustafa Baltacı from Coop Ventures is moderating this session. The panel is in English. A side note on concurrent events I would like to give to you. Professor Emre Alkın is signing his books in the foyer now. There is a country presentation on Latvia starting now in Kakun. You may follow them. And now I would like to welcome our panelists and our moderator, Mustafa Baltacı. You may take the lead. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. It looks like we need to switch back to English. And if there would be any need in the audience, please, pick up your headset from outside. And there's a desk. And I think right after the bankers panel, let's try to make it as attractive as possible. But I think it is also a very interesting and exciting discussion, because what we have been seeing in the financial services industry is that some of the payment services are becoming more like banks, right? Perhaps we can concur on that in many aspects. So this is the core of the discussion, because, well, it relates to the banking services in a way, because banks, in many circumstances, they're also challenged by this fact. And, well, they have new competitors, right? And I don't want to name the names, but there are lots of neobanks, digital banks, that happen to be the payment companies by license, at least. So this is basically the intro point for the panel. And I feel very privileged, sitting with these three amazing experts. And I'd just like to sort of give the opportunity and time for you to introduce yourself. Can you please start?
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Najmal. I work at MasterCard, and I look after the segment organization, the non-financial institution across Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, very nice. This is Itır. I'm working at Yapı Kredi as Ecosystem Banking and the Innovation Director. Hope you will enjoy our meeting today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Pınar Özcan. I'm a professor of entrepreneurship and innovation at Oxford University, and I'm the founder and director of a research center at Oxford called the Future of Finance and Technology Initiative.
I think the structure of the panel is really incredible, because we can potentially resonate on different dimensions, from the banking perspective, from the MasterCard's perspective, as well as from the university point of view. And I guess this is something quite amazing. So let's start with how we have been basically witnessing and observing the change. And some people call it evolution, some people call it revolution. I'd just like to hear more about that one in terms of your standpoint. So how do you see the payment industry has evolved or revolutionized itself for the last 10 years or decade? Yeah.
Sure. So if we just take a step back into the history, 1930s was when the first credit card came into the world, and it was a charge plate. It was actually called a charge plate. It was a small metal rectangle which had the customer's name embossed on it and the address, and it had a paper attached to it for signature. And the customer did not carry that credit card. It was issued by large-scale merchants, and the merchant kept it. And when the customer would come to the shop, the clerk would fetch that card for the customer to pay. That was 1930. 1960s, 30 years later, the first MaxStripe card, credit card, came to the market. And that was like a big hit, because you could carry your own card in your own wallet. 1993 is when the first chip and pin credit card came. That's 40 years later. And the world still has MaxStripe cards, so by 2033, we will be getting rid of all MaxStripe. That's another 40 years of change. And why I'm telling these number of years which have made the progress in terms of payments on cards, in 2014, wallets were launched, which is very recent. And already more than half of the world's population is actually paying by wallets. More than half of world's e-commerce is being paid by wallets. So first of all, the pace of change has completely changed. In a good way, it's faster. And there are two reasons to that. One is infrastructure requirements. So earlier, the changes in terms of adoption of payment required infrastructure changes. That's why you still see MagStripe card being used, because it requires an infrastructure change. Now, most of the technology changes, they do not require an infrastructure change. A second is the consumer adoption. Consumers would adopt technology faster, especially in today's time, if it's convenience, it's secure, and it's fast. And the last part is very, very important. I mean, I'm not that old, but I come from the BlackBerry era. So we used to enter our password and we used to type the emails, but I never complained that I'm entering a password or my thumb is aching. But now if my iPhone doesn't recognize my face, I'm pretty irritated to enter the password, right? Because I'm the same person, but the technology and its evolution has kind of changed my expectations, right? So I think the key trend would be, as more payment methods, which you can see at MasterCard that we are investing in, whether it's biometrics, contactless, card on file, as more payments provide consumers convenience, security, and speed, the faster the adoption would be. Now, technology is technology. Some technologies scale, some don't. There are 50,000 people who have installed chip for payment under their skin in the hand. Now, I would never do that personally. I may do that to track my children's movement when they're a teenager, but I would never do it for a payment. But the logic for those people is security, that my phone can be stolen, my wallet can be stolen, but my hand is with me, right? So I think those three are the underlying factors, and we will see faster adoption of technology as long as consumers are getting these three aspects, and merchants also are getting more business, and it's safe and secure payment for them.
I think it's a very good baseline in terms of this, discussion, right? Infrastructure, the rule sets, regulations, as well as the customers, as the end users. And certainly the data is something quite critical today, as you said, right? The chip under the skin. I don't know if I would do that too, but I think I saw the BlackBerry area, so I was a user, for the banking services too. So let's continue with you in terms of how you see the payment services as a banker.
First of all, I hope we can keep our hands with us after 10 years. No one is going to steal them. And as a perspective from the banking, especially in Turkey, there was a high adoption for the digital services, including digital payments. Afterwards, I can give some numbers, like in our bank, the adoption is more than 90%. So when we focus especially for the payment area, Turkey has been in there for a long time. So as we mentioned, it started ages ago, and Turkey and the customers also accepted the rules, the payment styles, the change very fast. Also, I believe that there is, again, three main drivers for this adoption. The first one is the technology, of course. As we mentioned, we, as a bank or for the fintech startups, we are very enthusiastic about the technology and what we can do for the next. The second one is the regulations. Actually, our regulations are working like an innovation hub. And each time they are trying to make something different, new, and easy adaptance. I can give some examples like open banking, which is regulated in Turkey, and regulations are with us. The second one is, we call it BKM, our Interbank Card Center Institute. Actually, they promoted the QR payments. Afterwards, in this year, we just started the request money, which are all help for the change, for the new era in Turkey. And the last one, I think the e-commerces. They were like startups, but they become unicorns. And nearly from the beginning, they had the embedded payment systems.
Yes, that's true.
So I really believe that these all three different times help to change the technology and the regulation and the customer habits as well.
I think it's also a very valid point by saying that there's this lead-lag relationship, I think, but it varies towards the circumstances. In some countries and some markets, it is the market structure basically creating the baseline. But in some other markets, it is the regulation, right? Impacting the infrastructure as well as the customer experience in a way. So how does it look, from the academic, point of view?
Sure. So I think that payments is significant because it's about data. So in addition to making it easier for people to pay, to send money, to receive money, I think for financial institutions, payments is pretty much about 90% of the useful data about a customer. And in my research, one of the informants in the UK told me, look, Pinar, if you know someone's Google searches and their payment data, you know pretty much everything about them, right? And I think it's pretty much true. Google searches will give you what they think about, and then payments will tell you what they do, right? And so when we think about it that way, I think the fact that payment services are the gateway to customer data becomes a very important concept. And data itself is something that traditionally banks have been shying away from looking at. I think that Turkey is much more advanced compared to the UK, the EU, and the US in terms of analysis of customer data in order to give them better services. But I'll give you a quote from a large UK bank, head of innovation, mind you, told me, we look at data as biohazardous waste. Imagine the concept. What do you do with biohazardous waste? You contain it, you keep it closed, just in case something happens with regulation and with compliance. And so the idea that customers' data is the most valuable asset about a customer, and we can use that in order to run machine learning and AI models to give them better, more tailored services at the spot is, I think, at the core of this innovation. And while banks are frantically trying to get there, and many of them are doing a great job, especially in this part of the world, I think payment providers, as well as big tech, is really using this payment data in order to innovate and take a share from financial services.
Do you think that is going to change the market landscape? Because data is certainly something, again, playing this quite pivotal role, right? And banks are struggling to keep it, store it, use it. Don't smile at me like that, because I have some challenging questions for you. But perhaps I was thinking more about basically having the next question in line for the banking sort of structure. But perhaps we can just touch upon the data as you just started that one. So would you like to keep the discussion from that point on and basically take a look at it?
Sure. So I think there are markets who are much more advanced and mature, also because they're very competitive, Turkey being one of them, right? The one who has the best customer experience would actually win. It's a saturated, more mature market. So in order to give the best customer experience, you can't treat the customer like a number in the portfolio. You have to be more personalized and tailored. And there are markets which are not that competitive because consumers a lot of time drive innovation. Competition, a lot of time drives innovation. And then there's a regulation aspect to it, right? So markets which are not that mature, I would say over there, data is still not playing a very important role in innovation and personalization because customers are okay with what they're receiving. But with more fintechs and neobanks entering and disrupting the industry, and I would say the regulators are reducing the boundaries to enter into financial services. Like in Middle East and Africa, a lot of telcos are granted now the license to enter into financial services. Now, to give credit to large banks, the telcos do not have the legacy infrastructure, right? They are not building products on some 100-year-old tech stack, right? Digital mindset is the only thing they know how to work because they have not seen anything else, right? So the cost to acquire customer is low, the cost to service customers is low. They're working on new advanced regulations. They have a challenge to scale because they do not have the existing customer base. But they have the right tech, the right product, the right experience. But important is that they have more segment-driven value propositions. So they're able to leverage data better. So a lot of telcos are only serving the bottom of the pyramid. That's like financial inclusion, right? So when you see a farmer who's selling oranges on the street, you equip this farmer with an acceptance device, right, which is on the phone, and you can all of a sudden see how much his sale is or her sale is. You get that data, plus the consumer is enabled with a virtual card. You get data on both sides. This is the only way you know how to grow business because they are not in a saturated market in a traditional banking model. right? So I think they're able to leverage data better. Banks, I would say, have a long way to go. You see a lot of personalization and efforts happening, but you need a collaboration between the large banks and the fintechs. Because it's very hard, and coming from a bank myself, to reorient your infrastructure, which was historically created based on product silos and not on customer experience. I mean, a lot of institutions today are investing to get a single customer view. The fact that I have a mortgage and a credit card with the same bank. Fintechs don't have that struggle, right? So I think you really can't compare. I would say the power of data and the harnessing of data would truly depend on the collaboration model between the two organizations.
I just saw this data, and it looks at hundreds of millions of people in Africa. They don't even have identity. So, I mean, speaking of financial inclusion and the utilization of the customer data, I think, well, there are two dimensions, right? First, having no access to these people, and this is sort of, there's this government role with that. It is a public service that needs to be conducted. And this is also about onboarding of these new customers by the financial institutions. So, well, there are two things with that. But the second part is basically once they are onboarded, well, you need to take care of them, right? So this is sort of the elephant in the room, correct?
Yes.
So how do you deal with that?
Okay. So when we discuss about data and personal data, we need to think more about technology as well. Because especially in these years, with the technology, we are eligible to use the data better and understand our customer and their habits better. So technology is almost there, I believe. We are in there, especially with the generative AI. Okay, we have been using AI for a long time, especially for the security issues, etc. But now, with the generative AI, we started in a new point. And we are working in new lines, especially for data, for personalization, how we can help, how we can see the real matter of the customer and answer it according to the some generative AI specifications. So in these days, we are focusing more to these issues. Let me give you some examples. From our super app, we have a special mini app for travel. And we are just launching the ChatGPT integration there. Our aim is to understand our customer better and also to give the best services for them. On the other hand, data is another issue in here because, as you know, Turkey, according to the regulations, cloud, etc., etc. So each time we are working a lot to keep the data in Turkey and make it personalized and be careful about all the legitimizations. But beside it, also in our mobile app, we have our predictive and proactive chatbot, and in which we embedded the payment system in there. So while you are making the chat, you can directly do the payments. So again, we are using our customer data. We are understanding if they need to make a payment or they are on a way to do the payment. Proactively, we are going and asking customers. So we are using data in these concepts a lot. But yesterday, the central bank, Hatice Karaman, just mentioned the digital TL as well. This is another issue about the digital ID as well. As long as we started to use the digital ID, we are going to start to use the digital TL in Turkey, and this will be a new payment way. As you mentioned, in some countries, they don't even have the ID card. Now we are changing it to the blockchain system. So everyone is going to use it, especially some banks or the institutions going to be node, and they will be helping customers to use it a lot. So I really believe that with the data, but with security and also with the blockchain, the new payment systems going to start to a new era.
What I understand from what you said is basically you're becoming like a payment service as a bank. So this is sort of the other way around, looking at the discussion topic here, which is interesting, by the way, because we happen to see more of these convergences in the market, right? So perhaps, Dr. Özcan, you can just touch upon this part by taking the discussion from the data. Perhaps you can also touch upon the regulation, the impact of the regulations, the data security, the GDPR, and we can switch to open banking, which is also enabling this convergence, right?
Of course.
So would that be okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds great. So I think that, and part of your original question, which I thought was great, was about the changing market landscape and the way that data is enabling that. And I think that the data really opens the gateways to competitive advantage in banking and overall in finance. And what that means for the changing nature of competition in banking is that those who not only have the data, but also know what to do with the data are going to be coming to the front in that competition. But if you think about the different kinds of players in the market all around the world, you see players that have data, mostly banks, and then payment services. And then you see players that are innovative in terms of machine learning and AI, but they don't necessarily have access to that data. And that makes it difficult for them to be competitive. So when we think about who has competitive advantage, of course, over the many decades until now, banks had the competitive advantage. And if they can use the data and innovate, like Itter has explained, then they will keep that competitive advantage. But there's also a different type of player that has data about us, which is big tech and all the platforms. And these platforms are becoming bigger and bigger. And there you can do not only your supermarket shopping, but you can also send a parcel, and you can do many things, one-stop shop platforms that are on our phones. They're gathering data about us too. And the more they integrate financial services into their products, they're going to be becoming a significant threat in the financial sector to the banks. And I think that, as you mentioned, open banking is one of the ways in which the market is becoming more competitive, because what open banking does is it allows third parties to access our data if we give them consent. So, for example, if normally I would get a loan, a business loan from my bank, and I would go to them, now my data in the bank, if I give permission, can be shared with a fintech that can perhaps give me a better loan, right? So competition is increasing through open banking, and I think that's, in general, good news, because, as Aman said, competition brings innovation.
Does it?
Well, I also think the regulation brings innovation, and I think in many ways it does, but I totally agree with what you said. I think you always see these headings, fintechs are a threat to banks, and, are banks going to be wiped out? I don't think so, because historically, as humans, we have trusted the banks with money, right? To your point, fintechs have the technology, but they don't have the scale of the customers, right? You have the technology to harness the data, but then you need the data, right? I think what banks should be worried about is Facebook. With Instagram, WhatsApp, what is the information that they don't know about me? They know everything. They know what I eat, who are my friends. They know about my holiday. They have every possible information. They even know what irritates me, right? Because I'm discussing with my friends when my kids are irritating me, right? So the amount of information they have, and to your point, they're digital first. Tech-wise, they don't have a problem. They have a digital mindset. They have the talent. So imagine if they embed payments, and if they decide to offer current accounts. They have made attempts here and there, but the regulators were not that open at that point in time. Then, it's a huge, huge threat to the traditional financial institution. So that competition, financial institutions should be extremely worried about. With the current fintech, I would say, the way I look at it is, my grandfather used to say, you don't have to solve every problem yourself, right? So banks don't need to solve every problem themselves. You can create orchestration layers behind your core banking systems. Fintechs can create that. I want to personalize an offering. Why do you have to invest in your entire infrastructure? Fintechs go deeper into a problem, solve it beautifully, right? You figure out those problems that are important for you, be it digitizing your service channels, be it personalization. Work with those fintechs, because it's a marriage made in heaven. The fintechs need you because you have the customer base, right? Any investor who's investing into the fintechs, the return that they need is how many customers you have, right? That's the main criteria. So fintechs need you, but you also need them, because it's very hard for you to build that tech inside. Going to your own CTO and asking for that investment and doing an investment case, God help you. You can do that through a partnership, right? So I would say fintech banks need to partner, and banks really need to be concerned about the big techs entering into financial services.
Do you think, Emna, so this sort of division of roles or sort of collaboration, so they need to complement each other based on what you said, this is mine, and I can't agree more. Do you think that open banking is an enabler in this respect? So fintechs would be sort of would be going out there supporting the banks, and banks would be out there sharing the data or the access points with the fintechs. That would be an enabler, or it would work the other way around?
It depends. You see the glass half full, half empty, or overflowing, right? So even when in UK and Europe, open banking as a regulation was launched, banks and banking associations had to come together to figure out the guardrails and the frameworks, right? There's so much so that a regulator can do. So I think it's a massive mindset shift. And in open banking, actually, it's the consumer who's driving the innovation. I get more choice, right, to your point. So if I get more choice, then banks have to compete for me, right? So it does drive innovation, but I think it boils down to mindset. And I know we talk so much about open banking, about AI, about blockchain, but for me, some things are fundamentals. You know, they don't require rocket science thinking. And I would start with those fundamentals. I'll very quickly give you an example. When I moved to the US, and yes, these markets are so much more mature than US, I had my first kid. I had a mortgage and a credit card from the same bank. So for the last 12 months, I was not eating out because I had a baby to look after plus a job. The bank offered me credit card dining reward multiplier, thinking that why am I not dining out? At the same time, they're seeing the amount of Pampers I'm buying, right? They're seeing I'm at all baby shops, but I got nothing on that. Same bank, I got a mortgage, and actually, they're offering me a top-up on that mortgage. Instead of seeing that I have a credit card and I have a mortgage and I've moved into this country, maybe I need furnishing discount. It doesn't require AI. It doesn't require open banking. You know, it's a very fundamental, basic thing. Back home, I received my new debit card, so the courier company called me, and they said, what's your address? We want to deliver the card. I said, but you should know the address you're delivering me the card. No, you have to tell me because I have to verify. So then I tell them the address. Then they come to my home, and the delivery guy says that, show me your national ID. So I show them the national ID. Then they say, sign the signature. I do the signature, and then they give me the card. So unfortunately, I'm married to a banker. He has to bear the brunt of all these things because I left banking. So I said, okay, you're doing this to protect the fraud, but let me understand. The fraudster needs to have my phone, because that's where you called. The fraudster needs to know my address, because that's what you asked. Then the fraudster needs to be inside my house to open the door. Then the fraudster also needs to have my original national ID. And the fraudster then needs to know my signature. What are the chances on earth that this scenario is going to happen, right? So banks are also building processes on top of processes and protecting the history. So I think that's why I talk about mindset. Change that mindset and think about like that's a thing of past, and here is where the future is, and if I have to change the whole simple card delivery process, what would it look like? You don't need new tech for that. You need a mindset change for that. Sorry for the long answer.
No. I think it's a great addition to the discussion. Perhaps, I mean, I'm a happy customer of Yapı Kredi, and you are one of the leading banks, right? So, I mean, what Amna said is, I think it is something quite an interesting angle. But for the Turkish example of open banking, working with the fintechs and other service providers, it's a bit of a tricky discussion, correct? So even though I'm a happy customer, I don't know if I am on a reasonable ground in terms of accessing the right services with the cost efficiency. I'm just saying this in code. So how do you approach to this? I mean, do you take this as an opportunity to improve your services, or you basically just do it by regulation? So what is the current stand with that?
Okay, in our limited 1 minute, I will try to explain it. First of all, we just launched open banking in Turkey a year ago. It was regulation perspective, okay. But what we did, first we examined our customers, just you like said, and try to understand their habits. Maybe in Europe or other countries, the customers are using their banks for daily financial issues. In Turkey, there is high interest rates, and our customers are using more than 2 or 3 banks together. And another favorite thing is to get the money from one bank to another. So according to this, open banking with the payment initiation service, we built a new product in the Turkey first time. And it was the first bank, Yapı Kredi, used this product, which is asking you if you want to bring money from another bank to be able to pay your credit cards or to be able to pay your loan, or would you like to put interest on it to make a deposit account? So this is how we are looking to the regulations. And beside it, we really believe the collaboration. That's why we became a bank super app. We converted our mobile app to a super app, which caused to collaborate. It is like a collaboration hub now. We are welcoming all the startups and the fintechs. They are all related to our super apps, like home insurances or the car rentals. And also we are working with the fintechs in the background services as well. As your grandfather said, we don't need to do everything by ourselves. And we put this strategy like 5 years ago. So we started 5 years ago to build this strategy. So we are a leading bank in Turkey, not only in Turkey, but I really believe that in Europe and many areas as well. The base is coming from the collaboration, and we really believe in that collaboration with the fintechs, with the big techs as well. The next stage, I believe the open banking is the banking as a service. Now we are building new systems that we will move our payment systems in the payment points. So there will be more coming.
Wonderful. Perhaps we can just, use the last 30 seconds in terms of this, futuristic view of yours. So, we have been seeing a lot of changes in the market. Sometimes it is due to regulation, sometimes it is due to market restructuring, sometimes it is due to digitization. So what do you think is going to be happening in 10 years from today? Are we going to be seeing more payment services like Nubank in Brazil or some of the European, counterparties like that in the European landscape? Or banks are going to be dominating the market? They will keep the market, role. So what do you think?
So I think in the future, we'll see the market dynamics shift to a certain extent. And what I mentioned earlier, the tendency to use one-stop shop platforms. And if you look at Asia, for example, I spent part of my last summer in China, and I was amazed at how you can do literally everything on Alibaba or WeChat. One of my Chinese students in Oxford told me that her sister got a divorce on WeChat, which is too much. But anyway, so I think that the trend is going towards one-stop shop platforms. And I think building a super app in that sense is a brilliant move. But what that means is that if people are interested in doing everything in one place, then is that place going to be a bank? Or is that place going to be another platform where some banking services that you use the most are going to be integrated? So it's going to be a war of platforms. And we have to count the big tech. And going back to Amna's point, Facebook Meta is the entity with the largest number of e-money licenses around the world to enable peer-to-peer payments. Imagine the power of that. And so I think overall the future is going to be a war between platforms and those innovative banks that already are thinking in terms of platforms and collaborations and bringing fintechs on board that have a chance to stand also as a competitive figure, whereas other banks that are thinking of themselves as we are a safe place where money can be stored, they're going to be just a box where money is stored, not anything more than that. I'll just keep it at that.
I think there's no clear answer, looking forward today. So perhaps we can just say that it's going to depend on the circumstances in a way, right? Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your comments and your contribution. So perhaps you should stop here. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please give an applause to our moderator and panelists. Thank you very much for your kind contributions.